Today, we're diving into something huge, a massive strategic shift by the European Union. We're talking about a plan to basically rewire its entire economy and its defense for a world that is changing incredibly fast. It is a high-stakes gamble for the future of the continent, and believe it or not, it all starts with a pretty simple question.
So what do you think? What possibly connects a giant wind turbine spinning out in the North Sea to a state-of-the-art battle tank sitting on Europe's eastern border? I mean, they seem like total opposites, right? You've got green energy on one hand and military might on the other. But the answer? Well, it reveals one of the biggest strategic challenges of our time.
And the answer is critical raw materials. These are, and I'm not exaggerating, the essential building blocks of our modern world. They're in the powerful magnets that make that wind turbine spin, and they're in the advanced electronics and armor of that tank. And here's the kicker. Europe has woken up to the fact that it doesn't control its own supply.
And, that lack of control, that leads us right into our first big topic here, a dangerous dependence. And this isn't just some economic headache we're talking about. No, this is a core strategic vulnerability that has finally forced the EU to take action.
So what exactly are these CRMs? Well, the official EU definition basically says they're the resources you absolutely must have for the green transition. Think electric cars and turbines, and the digital transition, your phone, your computer. But also, and this is crucial, for defense, for aerospace, and even for food security. To put it simply, they're the bedrock of any modern competitive economy.
And this is where the scale of the problem really hits you. For most of these essential materials, Europe is almost totally dependent on imports. And one country, China, has managed to establish dominance over the entire global supply chain. We're talking from the moment the stuff is dug out of the ground to the moment it's processed into a finished high-tech component.
And let me tell you, this dependency has real teeth. It's not just a theory. In recent years, China has actively used this power, slapping export controls on materials like graphite, gallium, and a whole bunch of rare earths. And what does that mean for European companies making cars, complex machines, or even life-saving medical devices? It means chaos. It means they're left scrambling, trying to find alternatives that, most of the time, just don't exist.
Now, this dependency isn't just about raw materials. Take a look at defense spending. In the 16 months after the invasion of Ukraine, as European nations rushed to rearm, get this, a staggering 80% of their defense budget was spent outside the EU, and over 60% of that went straight to the United States. So all that money is just flowing out, reinforcing the very dependency Europe wants to escape, instead of building up strength at home.
And all of this really gets to the political reality driving this change. As the European Commissioner Thierry Breton put it, Europe must take greater responsibility for its own security, regardless of the outcome of our allies' elections every 4 years. I mean, the message couldn't be clearer. The era of relying on others is over.
So, that's the problem. A pretty big one. The question is, what is Europe going to do about it? Well, that brings us to our next section. Europe's new blueprint, a comprehensive plan for self-reliance.
The EU's response is basically a two-pronged attack. For all those materials, there's the Resource EU Action Plan. And for the military hardware, there's the first-ever European Defense Industrial Strategy, or EDIS for short. Together, they're a plan to bring these absolutely critical supply chains back home.
And this isn't the first time they've tried something like this. The blueprint here is based on a really recent success story, the REPowerEU plan. That was the strategy that rapidly and successfully got the continent off its dependency on Russian gas after 2022. So they're taking that same logic, de-risking and diversifying, and applying it to materials. And this plan comes with some really hard targets. By 2030, the goal is to extract 10%, process 40%, and recycle 25% of its own needs for these strategic materials. And that fourth goal is absolutely crucial: diversify imports, so that no single country can hold Europe hostage by supplying more than 65% of any one material.
Okay, so ambition on this scale sounds great, but it's not going to be cheap, right? Of course not. That brings us to the price of security and the kind of money being put behind this huge strategic shift.
Just to kickstart the whole material strategy, the EU is mobilizing €3 billion in the next 12 months alone. Now, this money is really designed to de-risk private investment. It's about providing guarantees and seed money to encourage private companies to take on the massive financial risk of opening new mines, new processing plants, and recycling facilities right there in Europe.
Then, on the defense side, there's a new fund,
the European Defense Industry Program, or EDIP, and it's launching with an initial budget of 1.5 billion euros. This money is specifically designed to get member states to pool their resources, buy military equipment together, and most importantly, buy it from European companies to build up that domestic market.
But is this enough money? Well, it really depends on who you ask. Germany's Der Spiegel called the plan a massive step forward. But then you have Euronews calling the funding modest, pointing out that it's a long way from the 100 billion euro fund that was once talked about. So you could see it as either a really serious commitment or a pretty cautious first step.
All right, so we've got the problem and we've got the plan, but how is this all playing out in the real world right now? Let's get into our final section, the reality check, a look at the early winners and losers in this brand new market. This new Buy European focus is already reshaping the continent's defense industry. On the winner's side, you've got companies like Sweden's Saab and Germany's Rheinmetall, who are just thriving. But on the flip side, some really big, important collaborative projects, like the Future Combat Air System, are faltering. It just goes to show you, this transition isn't going to be smooth for everyone. Let's look at the winners. Saab has scored these huge contracts, selling its advanced GlobalEye aircraft to France and A-26 submarines to Poland. Rheinmetall, their sales are up 28% thanks to a flood of orders for vehicles and ammunition. And the French-German firm KNDS is actually starting new production of the Leopard 2 tank for the first time in over 30 years. So yeah, the tide of new spending is definitely lifting these boats.
But more money doesn't automatically solve everything. The prime example here is the Future Combat Air System, or FCAS. This is a hugely ambitious next-generation fighter jet program between France, Germany, and Spain. And it has pretty much stalled, reportedly because of infighting between its main contractors over who's actually in charge.
So, the crucial point, the main takeaway, is this. Europe isn't just opening its wallet. It is fundamentally trying to change how and where it spends its money, on everything from raw materials all the way up to fighter jets. The goal is to redirect all that capital inward to create a more resilient and self-reliant Europe for decades to come.
Which, of course, leaves us with one final big question. Are we watching the birth of a truly independent fortress Europe, one that's capable of standing on its own? Or is this just a frantic, maybe even belated, race to catch up in a world that is no longer willing to wait? That is what we'll all be watching. Thanks for joining us.